Hello from Gardening at Douentza here in Ireland, and welcome back to Douentza Garden in Wexford for a second garden visit video in May. Now the garden is really looking lush and super at the moment, and everything is shooting up at a rate of knots, and it's for this reason that I wanted to share with you the new flowers and the new growth and the new things that are looking amazing at the moment, so you wouldn't miss out on a thing. So come with me and let's have a look around the garden at the end of May and check out how it's looking. And I guess we're going to start this little garden tour here on the tarmac where the drive is, and the hedge has just recently been trimmed. This is an alternate copper and green beech hedge, and it's looking quite well at the moment. But the thing that really jumps out is the amazing laburnum, and this really is a spectacular tree when in flower. There's a Vigilia down in front of it, a pink Vigilia. Do you see that? So I think you must forgive me for my dalliance with pink and yellow together. Let's take a closer look at the tree. Isn't it just sumptuous and fantastic? Of course highly poisonous, but you can't have everything. My son Samuel says it's his favourite tree in the garden, and I'm really delighted that he's pointed out something that, you know, he's particularly interested in. In a minute I'll show you the tree we actually planted for him, his birth tree, which is quite different from the laburnum. Now this is quite an old laburnum. Let's see if we can get some good shots here if I stand back a bit. So this would be like 17 years old, and we had just moved into this house, 18 years old. We just moved into this house from our previous house, and I saw the laburnum tree for sale up where we used to live before in Wicklow. And I bought it and I put it in the back of the car, and I was sticking out the back window as I drove down the highway to bring the tree home. But I got it home. It wasn't this big then, but it was fairly big. And just leaving aside the laburnum for a minute, we'll take a quick look at these borders here at the front. And I suppose the thing that really jumps out is the bearded irises. And I have a separate video about bearded irises. Actually, it's probably already been published. This is the one that is my absolute favourite, Champagne Elegance. And that blue one behind is, I don't have a name for this, but it's one that my daughter, when she was my son, chose and insisted on buying, and it really is quite a nice one too. Irises really are spectacular flowers, and it's shaping up to be a really good year for the irises. Even ones I have in partially shaded areas are about to flower. The Heuchera is really looking well at the moment, and it's about to come into flower. You can see there are lots of flower spires there at the front. And this is one that does really well for me. Again, I'm sorry, I don't think I have a name. If I find one in my database, it's going up on the screen now. And I can't wait for this thing with the daisies to burst into flower, because this really is a joy when it zings forth with its flowers. Okay, so I think it's time to go through the arch now and into the main part of the garden. And we pass by some variegated yuccas here, which are not looking so spruce at the moment, and that one there is a variegated yucca as well. It sort of flowered this year, and then the central part is just green, so I had to cut off the tatty leaves there, and you can see that they were actually variegated, but the central part is green, so that's a bit of a disappointment. On the other side, the box balls I haven't trimmed yet, but the Hemerocallis or daylilies are just shaping up for an amazing year. Now this is one called Rocket City that my son Josh bought me one year for my birthday, and it is absolutely covered in buds, and we're going to see the same story with the daylilies as we search further down in the garden. Now, daylilies aren't a great plant for Ireland. You really needed an exceptional one to flower reliably, but this year is going to be a super year for them. And down we go where the wheel beckons us, and a rhododendron. And we can see that Virginia Richards is busy undressing there on the floor, very untidily. We have Lupin Manhattan Lights, I think it's called, looking really well at the moment. And oh yeah, I have to show you these cute little Dianthus here at the front. And Dianthus seem to be all the rage at the moment. There are so many for sale in the garden centre. Charmy, I think this one is called, and it certainly is. Lots of buds to come too. So leaving Charmy aside, on the other side you can see that the Campanula lactiflora, that's that green one here, is well, it's growing well, and I've deployed all of the metal hoops I own at the moment to trying to support this, and I really could do with some more, but they're quite expensive, the metal hoops. You could never have too many of them. Let's just tuck some of these in here before they lose the run of themselves altogether. That's probably the best we can do. Yeah, so, well, that'll be supported. That won't be supported unless I get some more hoops. That one is drooping already. Beside poor Dr. Acula, I know he's distraught. And we have some roundy hoops down here holding up the other stuff. Just a quick glance at the Silene behind. Now, this is the uncoolest plant in the world. Nobody admits to having this, but look at the flower you get on it. And it flowers for such a long time. Yeah. And in front of Dr. Acula is his friend, Misanthropy. And she is now flanked by two Lobelia Cardinalis, which are the red plants there. And I have a whole story to tell you about these, and it's the story of climate change. Because when I first moved into this garden, this Lobelia Cardinalis was my absolute favourite plant, and I planted it everywhere and it did amazingly for me. And it has this gorgeous red foliage and tall blood red spires of flowers. Really, 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 really attractive. And then one year it died, and since then I've not been able to grow it. Now, Lobelia Cardinalis likes wet conditions. It really can even be grown in a pond with its feet at the edge of the pond in the water. So it likes moisture, and I guess the thing that we conclude is that the climate has changed. My garden has changed. No more can I have boggy plants. It's dry plants for me, which is, well, interesting and scary as well at the same time. Okay, moving down here to another border. Oh, I forgot to show you. Over here we have the Fatsia green fingers that you may recall I bought in the early part of the year, and I've planted it in the ground there, and I hope it'll do well. So over here we have a couple of rhododendrons which are now in flower, and these are early acquisitions that came into the garden when we first moved here, and I have therefore no label for them. I don't know what they are, but yeah, they're good size, and flanked by variegated horseradish. And look at this peony coming into flower. Look at you, you beauty. Look at you. Now this one is Red Charm, I think, and the name is going up on the screen. And I have deployed a peony hoop there for it. We have another flower here. Now herbaceous peonies are my absolute favourite flowers, and that's because they're so gorgeous. Super. I had more peonies in here, not sure what happened to them. Is that all I want to show from this border at the moment? Oh yeah. Okay, down here we have a little geranium that's coming into flower, and this is a double one, and as we all know, there are very few double geraniums that are hardy, but this is one of them, and it really has a nice flower. So we will see that soon, and there it is, and this is a Rigaron there on the left with a sneaky weed. And that's what we call a sneaky weed. So I'm just turning around here to see what else I can show you. And back there we see the Laburnum, and these areas here. That's the house up there. I suppose we should just take a brief jaunt over this side of the garden, which I'm working on at the moment, and there's edging and weeding afoot. And at the front of this border here we have the pipes. And these have just recently been planted up with house leeks or sempervirens, cheap things that I bought when I was down Cork way, and sedum. That sedum has been there for a very long time actually, and the thing about these clay pipes is that they afford excellent drainage, so you can get away with some plants that perhaps normally you wouldn't get away with outdoors. Look at this sedum, it's spilled out over the edge there and decided to populate that whole space behind. Looks really well, very pleased with that. And behind it we have Hemerocallis shaping up to be really well this year. Some red hot pokers, alstroemeria, and a boutilon, just the white one there. Now, as I was planting up the pipes, I noticed that this verbascum had decided to seed here, and in fact it's blocking that pipe completely. So I wanted to weed it out, or remove it and put it somewhere else ideally, but it's a bit late in the season to be doing that, so that this can get some light and I can plant something in it. But then the verbascum flowered, and it has these lovely pink flowers, and that's very interesting because it's a seedling from Verbascum caxi, which is just over there, and it's the album form, the white form, yet this flower has pink. So Verbascum is up to its old tricks again, and at the end of this video I'll link to a video I made a while ago about promiscuous Verbascum and how it gets about in the garden, and you can see what I mean. But I like this flower a lot, so what I decided to do was not plant up that pipe and wait until this finishes flowering and then move it, because this is a perennial Verbascum, not one of the biennial ones, so you know, if I treat it right I'll have it for several years. Anyway, that's my story about the Verbascum. And now we're going to go over to that section of the garden where the large rhodo beckons us and have a look at what's been done there. Don't you think? Kind of pretty. And behind it is a big cedar tree, and this is my son Samuel's birth tree, and Sam is a tall big boy, so I think we actually chose a very fitting tree. And just beside it there is the laburnum tree, which is the one he actually loves. So the two of them look at each other and scowl. Now, when we first planted this tree, we were very short. We had been a very short time in this property, and the whole garden was just grass. And in order to plant the tree, need to weed under it. In order to plant the tree, we had to mow a path in the grass, because there was just grass here at the time, in the long grass, down here to a spot, a random spot where the tree got planted, and we had a little party and people came around and congratulated us on, it was his naming day, his baby naming. He wasn't baptized, we had a baby naming. And yeah, and the tree was planted, and it was like the only thing in the garden at the time, but it has done really well. And I've started kind of trimming the branches at the side, just so its width isn't as extensive as it can be, although this tree is going to take over us all in the end. Okay, so here we have the section of the border that I planted up last autumn, and I will link to that video at the end if I have enough space. I can only link to 4 videos at the end, so I have to choose them carefully. But this all got replanted, and it's growing well despite the drought that we're currently having. It has been watered, and there were gaps in the border, so what I've done most recently is planted my dahlias out in among the gaps, in the gaps which are there. There's the dahlia, there, that one, and over here, that one. So they'll need to be staked in time, and the membrane is still down there at the back. And what I want to do now, what I've decided to do, is to plant Tetrapanix rex through the membrane to just reduce the amount of weeding and maintenance that I have to do in this high maintenance garden. Yes, it's quite high maintenance really. So that's the next thing that needs to be done, because I admit that plastic is very, very ugly, and we want to not be looking at it for as much as we don't have to look at it. Can you hear the bees singing there in the rhodo? They really like its flowers. I really like this one. It's good. And just before we leave this section in the garden, I've brought you over to the shady patch that I've pointed out in the last couple of videos, which is the last section to have been planted in this part of the long border. And I still had a lot of gap at the back, but I have since then planted 13 Dactylorhiza, and I have 2 very large clumps of Dactylorhiza over the west side of the garden, tall hybrid ones. And well, anyway, I divided one of them, and I'm looking forward to a big clump of it forming here before very long. And here we are at the, well, up here again by the Laburnum tree. There it is. And we'll just walk across this section of the garden past the arches, which are there on the right. And yeah, we'll go across, and if we just turn briefly to the left, and just to orient you, that's where we walked down at the beginning of this video, down towards the wheel. But at the moment we're not going to walk down there again. We're going to continue across here and have a look at some more things that are looking promising or good. And now we're beside this second arch, and if we look down here, we can see the chimenea at the end, which I put up on the platform, and the Tetrapanix rex trees beginning to leaf up, and the Aurelia beginning to leaf up as well. I absolutely love this Hosta. It's possibly my favourite one. It's called Francis Williams, and the great thing about it is that the slugs don't bother with it at all, and it doesn't burn in the sun, and it's variegated and has a kind of blue colour. Really is blue. Isn't it a good one? And there's some flower spikes coming there soon, so well, we'll look forward to that. So I guess we'll just continue on over here, and before we go off into that section, I just want to show you briefly what I did down here beside the giant Acer. And I know a lot of you are quite impressed with this Acer, Japanese Acer, when I showed it in the last video. And there it is on the left. And I have since then placed this Heuchera in a pot. This one here, it's a tender plant, in the border, and I think it does brilliantly just to brighten it up, because it was all a bit dark with the Acer and the Cardinalis and the Ligularia, dark, dark, dark. It really needed something to zing it up, and just the glaucous leaves of the Heuchera I think really do a good job. And you can see the Heuchera is actually in a pot, but you don't notice the pot so much because it's black and it's a dark border, so I think I can get away with that. That's my story anyway, and I'm sticking to it. Just to swing around at my Tetrapanix trees, looking really, really tree-like in this border. Super duper. And I guess those of you who've been watching my series of my month of perennials will have noticed in the first episode I talked about Bergenia, and that Bergenia there, that's the Ballawley one, which is my favourite. And here we are, and I'm just going to turn completely around just to give you an idea of where we are in the garden, because I am aware that it's a bit disorienting. I'm doing my best to show you where I'm moving to, but yeah. So that's a border that, oh, we'll have a look at that. That's looking really good at the moment. This is the Piet Oudolf border. And down there is where we've just come from, and then just beside us here we have some very large pear trees and a long border with various plants in it, including that geranium there, Renardii, which also featured in my series, my month of perennials. And here we are looking at this bed here. It's the Bogart bed, a story which I'll go into sometime if anybody's interested, and it is really looking well at the moment. So let's go in and have a look. Pinks and whites, and the cardoons, I think with the silver foliage, really add to it. We have the Variegata tree in flower back there, and okay, I'm aware that people pronounce this differently. I can't I can't remember how it's supposed to be pronounced, but anyway, yeah, that's really looking good at the moment. The cardoons, gorgeous. And do you see that pink one over there? That's Silene. It's also here on our right. And we'll just zoom in here to have a look at its umbels. Fantastic, fantastic plant from Madeira, and a welcome addition to anyone's borders. Look at those gorgeous flowers. Really, really super. And of course, the front we have Aquilegias, which the bee is really enjoying. And what else have we got in here? We have stuff coming, you know. This Geranium Summer Skies, the tall one, has buds now, lots of buds now. So it won't be long before these come into full flower. I'm completely captivated by the casual beauty of this border. Now, there's nothing terribly exotic in here, but the plants that are together just really work together. In this season anyway. Lots of pinks and whites, and there are some blues in there as well, but it's all very soft and feminine and flouncy. And yeah, I think we all have that side to our personality, and we should embrace it in the garden, because you know, there are lots of aspects of life where you can't embrace it. So if you can just let go to your artistic side and your feminine side in the garden, I think that often repays really well. So back to this side again, and as we start to walk up here, I guess the thing that really jumps out is this clump of irises here on the right. And these are Pacific Coast irises, and I cannot believe how many flowers I have. Now, I was a bit worried about this clump. I thought it had got too big. I thought it had died off in the middle. I wanted to divide it and lift it in spring. But the time to lift it is actually autumn. So I'd missed my opportunity, and it's meant to be a bit of a fussy iris, although you'd never guess that from looking at the size of it. So I didn't want to take any risks. So I decided to leave it for another year. And oh my God! It's absolutely chock-a-block with flowers. Look at that. It's in partial shade here as well. Actually, I need to look up what kind of aspect this iris likes, because I would have thought full sun, but it seems very happy there. Now that's an amazing clump. Of course, the plant, it doesn't do much when it's not in flower. It's just, you know, green. But oh my God, look at that. Aren't they fantastic? Really, really pretty irises. And I guess we have not much else to show on this side of the border. The Phytolacca. I always have a dyslexic moment when it comes to this plant. The variegated one looking really, really good. And the Douentza tree just behind it is in full flower and is actually very prettily scented. Now my husband noticed this, I didn't notice. But there's a really pretty scent just around this section of the garden, and it comes from the Douentza. Now those flowers will fade soon, but you see the bracts above. They linger for a good while and just add that bit of extra interest to the garden. Over here we have Alstroemeria Verona, which really needs staking. I need some more metal hoops. And Empress Wu, looking woo. It's hard to give you an idea of the scale, but that's enormous. It's really enormous. And getting more enormous by the day. And, you know, well, a lot of people have talked to me about, oh, you need to do this with their hostas, and you need to feed them, and you need to do this, that and the other. And really, you know, I don't have time. I can't be feeding and watering things that are in the garden. It just doesn't work like that. When they're in the garden, they take care of themselves. They'll take care of greenhouse or house plants, but not things in the garden. But anyway, I mean, basically the story is that if you're patient and you have given your plants the right conditions, they should repay you in the end, and I think that's what the hosta is doing. Now this is Hemerocallis. Great name, but even more fantastic flowers. Another bush that people tend to fight over in garden centres when it's in flower. We gardeners really have no imagination. We need to see something in flower to know how amazing it is. And this is just coming into flower now at the moment. We have a good number of them that are, well, not in flower. Okay, so that's just over here beside Euphorbia and that silver thing. Can't remember what that's called. Oh yeah, I wanted to show you over the other side a couple of irises, and if we walk over here we can see, first of all, not opened yet, but you can't see it because it's so black. But this here, see, now you can see it. This is iris, bearded iris superstition, and this one really is black, and it's gonna do well. I have another stem over there. As I said, good year for the irises. Hi guys. And here we have a tree peony that is looking very tree peony like. Look at that. I think the center of the flower is really, really gorgeous. Isn't it spectacular? Really big flowers as well. I had two this year. And yeah, yummy. Okay, we're getting near the top now, but you can see that the table beckons us, and that patch there is Alstroemeria Oriana, which is just keying up to flower. Lots of buds on it, and it will be out before very long and look fantastic. But just before that happens, what I would like to do is just take a little mosey down this path here and just have a look at a couple of things there. Clifophia northii looking good, although I think I probably need to do a bit of a more clear up of the foliage, because those lower leaves, you can see I've removed some and cut them, but yeah, the yellow isn't a good look, is it? That tree there, it's a variegated tulip tree. There we go. They're quite nice leaves, but the downside is you get no good autumn colour from this tree, which is terrible, because this is the reason why I bought the tree in the first place. Just shocking. And over here we have a little patch that I talked about last time, and since I made the last video I have planted my sanguinaria in here, which are these beautiful plants. And as you can see, I have a large number of them. I dug them up from somewhere else in the garden where they weren't thriving and put them in here, and I think this is just going to be the place for them. But I thought you'd appreciate seeing this prize plant of mine. Isn't it lovely? I bought this at the Bloom show just recently, and well, not recently, a couple of years back now. And it does really well and produces seed and everything. I'm putting the name up on the screen because I can't remember off the top of my head, but really, really pretty flowers. Needs a bit of a stake as well. You know, I really need to get my hand on some metal hoops. And up here we have the greenhouse, and as you can see from stuff on the lawn, I am still sorting it out. Nearly finished now, but I just got a couple of large pots over there. And just a quick look back this way. And here we are at the Zenny area, which continues to attract pots. I may have gone too far, but we will see. Saxifrage Lissadel here at the front, looking amazing. Isn't that just absolutely fantastic? Gorgeous, gorgeous thing. And it's surrounded, of course, by, oh, that's a house leek, but the aeoniums are not hardy. They've just been planted out here recently. And just, that's the puya, and I'm still kind of working out where to put those stepping stones. And there's my wall underway, which I talked about last time. I ran out of stones, but well, I'll get stones as time goes on. It just won't be ready for my open day, but that's okay. You know, not everything has to be finished at one particular point in time. A garden is always a work in progress. Okay, and that brings us to the end of this video. A garden tour at the end of May, when things begin to grow at the rate of knots. Everything is shooting up all over the place, and if you stand still you'll miss something. So I hope you appreciate being brought a second garden visit in the month of May. I hope you're enjoying your garden at the moment, and that you'll check back for lots more videos on this channel. That's all for now. Bye!